Kia ora. Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everybody to our first live Q&A for 2023. Thank you to everybody for joining us from wherever you are. I'm joining you from beautiful downtown Wellington City. We've got an overcast day, but still a lovely day to be in Wellington. So today, our topic is New Year, New Role. And this is a Q&A for all sorts of different people, whether you're applying for your first job, whether you're applying for a change of position, whatever it is, it's a really good thing to do to have an up-to-date CV and cover letter. Now, I am Thomas McGrath. I'm a consultant at Wright, and I'm joined by two of our expert consultants as well, Corinna Lines and Colleen Trolove. Now, I'll introduce those lovely folks in a minute, but first of all, just to let you know about this webinar, this live Q&A, I'm going to be asking some questions of our consultants, but you can too. So if you are, wherever you are logged in from, just down the bottom here, you'll see that there's a Q&A function. If at any point in the webinar you have a question for our lovely consultants, please put it in the Q&A function, and we will find some time to get through as many questions as we can. I'm sure you'll all have burning questions and you've come along with something that you want to know, and our intention today is to try and give you as much information you can use and handle in the half-an-hour period. Now, a quick note, this session is sponsored by Wright Online. What is Wright Online? Wright Online is our online library of micro-learning videos and resources. So you can sign up for a free trial. Go to Wright Online, that's Wright with a W, .co.nz, and you can try it out for 7 days. There's heaps of content on there, and even we're going to release a special video about CVs and cover letters, which will answer some more specific questions that you might have. So without further ado, let's get into it. First of all, I'm going to hand it over to Corinna just to do a very quick introduction of yourself so we know who we're talking with. Tell us about yourself, Corinna.
Right, kia ora everybody. I started working with language in London for McKinsey and Company, who are big management consultants. I was their head of proofreading, and I had to recruit other proofreaders, which seemed to mean that every arts graduate in the UK sent me their CV. Now I've been at Wright for a while, working on reports and documents, editing, proofreading, evaluating the language and structure. I also coach clients who want to improve their writing skills, and sometimes they want some work on their CVs. And I mark the writing tests that we use for recruitment. So I've seen quite a range of writing in my time, and I really enjoy helping people to improve their writing.
Lovely. Kia ora, Corinna. Thank you for joining us. And Colleen, this is not your first Q&A, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Kia ora, everyone. I'm Colleen. Hi. I'm a trainer and consultant at Wright, and I have dabbled in helping my many friends and family over the years with their CVs. It's so incredibly satisfying helping people get the roles that they're after. So yes, done a lot of on the side evening helping of people with their CVs. Also, we've been doing a bit of recruiting ourselves, and so I've ended up seeing a lot of CVs and cover letters over the years that way, and have developed some opinions about what it's like as a reader to experience the onslaught of vast numbers of CVs and have to cut through and decide what it is that's catching my attention.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Well, we have two wonderful consultants here, and again, they are open to taking questions. You can put them in the Q&A function down the bottom there. If you have anything that you would like to ask them, please don't hesitate, and we will make as much time to get through questions as we can. Now, the first thing, I'm just going to put you on the spot here and say, if you could summarize your collective goodies into 3 points, you're only allowed 3 points. What would you say are your top 3 tips for anyone who's watching out there who wants to write or rewrite, adapt, whatever it is, their CV or cover letter? Corinna, your top 3 tips, please.
Okay, the first one is you are the expert on your life, but you have to shift your thinking to what the reader wants to know, not what you want to tell them. 2, keep it clear and simple, not too much detail. Use headings to split things up into little chunks. And be honest, no stretching the truth or white lies or things you might have done but didn't quite.
Okay, lovely. I'm sure we'll dig into a little bit more detail about some of those things as we go along. That's a lovely start. Thank you, Corinna. Colleen, what are your top 3 tips?
Okay. I think firstly, a CV is about information. So make sure it informs. It's far more about the information than it is about the formatting or the design of the document. I think cover letters, the biggest thing that will catch someone's attention is a well customized cover letter. And I think it's well worth putting effort into that, into customizing that. And as far as the CV goes, I would say make sure that it really properly represents you so that they get a snapshot of your education, your experience and your skills, and they get that boom, 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 this is who that person is.
Lovely. Okay, fantastic. Well, we actually have a question already, so I'm going to hand it over to anonymous attendee. This is our first question. Any suggestions for the opening sentence to use in a cover letter? Are there more interesting ways to start other than the usual and kind of boring? I agree. Dear X, I am writing to apply for the position of Y. Do either of you have a quick thought on that one?
There's definitely better ways to do it, because what you're doing is you're trying to be a bit of a journalist. You know, when you start reading a newspaper article, you want that first line to grab the person's attention. So I wouldn't start off by stating the obvious, which that is, you know, think of something different. Like, I was really excited when I saw your job ad. That's just the area I want to get into. You know, just to make it you, but make it something that makes them want to keep reading.
And onto that, I would say the subject line can be the bit where you're identifying which job you're applying for.
And those details are important to get right, eh? Like making sure that the job title, the job description, or whatever it's called matches up and everything, especially if you're applying for a lot of different jobs. Okay, on that, we talked very briefly just then about tailoring it. Should we be writing a completely new cover letter and CV for every single job that we apply for? Like there's a level of customization we want. How far do we go? Colleen, what are your thoughts on this, on starting from scratch, or however you can do it?
I would say cover letter every time. Absolutely customize the heck out of that thing. As far as the CV goes, you probably won't need to if you're applying for the same type of role, or, you know, within the same category of role over and over again. Usually one CV aimed at a particular industry or field will do the trick for a range of jobs within that field.
Corinna?
Corinna, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say your CV, it shouldn't really change. You know, what you've done, your experience, your strengths, they're not things that change so much. I would say have one version of your CV that you label as your master version. And then occasionally you might want to tweak it a bit for a job where you're maybe emphasizing some past experience that you've had. But keep that master one untouched, save a new version so that you know that your master stays put and you know what's in it. The cover letter is always your opportunity to do something different, tailored to the job, tailored to what's in the ad, you know, the keywords that are in the ad, the sort of tone of the ad. Is it casual? Is it funny? Is it very serious? So yeah, the cover letter should always be something that is trying to mirror the language in the ad, I think.
Lovely. Okay, thank you, anonymous attendee, for that one. Let's go to Catherine Lofthouse. Thank you very much for your question. Catherine has asked us, what is the optimal length for a good CV? Any tips on for how to write a concise and impactful CV when you have a breadth of experience you want to include? So 2 parts to that one. Let's do the first one, the optimal length. Are there any kind of guidelines just for generally how long a CV or cover letter should be?
Who would you like to talk?
You go, Corinna, you're on.
Okay, I'm definitely on. Okay, I have to say, you know, at the beginning I said, think about your reader. So when I was recruiting proofreaders in London, I would regularly get 200 CVs through. Now, with the best will in the world, even if I gave each one 3 minutes, that's 10 hours. So you have to be thinking, I might only have 3 minutes. They might not make it past the first page. and that's your reason for having all the important stuff on that first page. Now, the worst case scenario for CV, which I'm sure none of you have done, is a lovely friend of mine who was a nurse said, could you have a look at my CV? And when he gave it to me, it was 25-year nursing history, every single job he'd ever had with a detailed list of tasks. So he had done what you could call the cumulative CV, where every time you get a new job, you just keep adding it on. And, you know, it was in Times New Roman with italics for all the tasks. And it was quite daunting, actually. And so I condensed it down. I took out, you know, the tasks you were doing 25 years ago are probably not going to be relevant. Never do the cumulative CV. Think of your CV as a container. I wouldn't say more than 3 pages, really. 2 pages if possible. Your CV is like a 3-page container. If you're adding stuff in, take some stuff out. But it should never just be a bottomless pit. You know, a dossier of everything you've ever done for money.
Yeah, I would say 2 pages is my current limit when I'm reading CVs. If it's longer than 2 pages, I wish they would have edited it.
Right. And so sometimes there can be a difficulty with, I know there's a perception out there sometimes that employers are skeptical if you have a break in your employment history. So how would you deal with that if you wanted to say you've had a job that is not relevant to the current position that you have? Do you take that out? How do you deal with that so it doesn't blow out to 35 pages? Colleen, while you're on.
Oh, the gap in the CV is an interesting one. It's you know, there can be so many reasons why you have a gap. And with the idea of painting a holistic picture of yourself, often a quick line explaining that you were on maternity leave or you were traveling overseas. You know, one guy, I remember a CV, he said he spent a year yachting around the world. And instantly I was like, oh, interesting person. Like, it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily a bad thing at all to have that, you know, just a line, just to say what you're up to.
Yeah. Yeah, so I wouldn't say leave jobs out, but I would literally just put the job title and the employer. You know, I had when I worked for McKinsey in London, I had a 2-year gap when I was on maternity leave, and so in my CV it just says 19 whatever to whatever with 2 years off maternity leave, this to this, and so I just condensed it. So you can condense it down where you're saying I did work, but it's not relevant. I was here. So what more details they can ask you, but I don't think they will.
Lovely. Great advice. Thank you. Okay, let's talk about language for a little bit. Corinna, you mentioned about mirroring the tone of the ad or the organization. We also want to make sure that we have our own kind of personal tone. I guess when we're wanting to be considered for a professional position, we want to sound professional. But that doesn't always mean using complicated big words or whatnot. How do we sound professional? Because we want to be taken seriously. So, Colleen, what are your tips here on navigating that difficult kind of area?
On a very basic level, in a CV, I wouldn't use contractions, like, you know, joining 2 words together with an apostrophe, but I'd consider doing it in a cover letter if I was representing myself as I see myself. I'd also think about that considering who I was applying to. So if I knew it was a very formal organization, I'd probably stick with a more formal tone than if I knew it was a very relaxed organization. It's just throwing a little idea out there.
Yep. Cool. Corinna, any thoughts on that one?
I think that keeping your language clear and precise is one of the, it sounds a simple thing to do, but what I'm trying to say is don't start using big words and long sentences because you think it sounds more professional. It's probably just going to sound more verbose. So you're thinking about professional. I mean, quite often, particularly younger people, you're actually writing to somebody older than you, somebody, you know, say higher up the ladder than you. You want to sound professional. And you can do that by not using things like jargon, tips of speak, you know, anything that might possibly be misunderstood or that a person might not understand. I had to ask my youngest yesterday what a clapback is. I'm still not sure I know what a clapback is, but just considering the person who's reading it, and writing as clearly as you can. And that colloquialisms, it's like I was when my son was going for a job interview at JB Hi-Fi, he showed me his outfit and I said, "You're not wearing a tie." And he said, "Mum, it's JB Hi-Fi. They want to know that I can dress like the people who shop there." Which she was absolutely right about, but I had these ideas in my head about how you should dress for job interviews. And I think we have similarly ideas in our head about what should go into job applications. And we can quite often think big words and long sentences are more impressive, but they're probably not. Again, we're going back to, if you've only got 3 minutes of the reader's time, how can you make the most of it?
Yeah, awesome. Okay, we've got another question here from our wonderful attendees. And again, if you've just joined us or you're sitting there thinking, "Oh, I really, really want to know the answer to this thing," down the bottom, you can click the Q&A function and log your specific question, and we will do our best to get them. We're getting a steady stream of questions, so keep them coming, everyone. Now, a question here from another person named Anonymous Attendee. What are the chances of that? The question is, what are your thoughts on personal statements? Leave in or out? Any thoughts from either of you? Colleen, I can see a little bit of nodding there. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I'm a fan of the personal statement if what you mean by that is a little paragraph at the top of the CV that is like a snapshot of you. Absolutely a fan. I think that's the chance where you can create a couple of sentences that ram home your experience, education, and skills in one quick bang snapshot of you. Keep it short, keep it clear, summarize.
Summarize.
Yeah.
Corinna, any thoughts on that one?
Oh, just to say, again, keep it professional. So, it shouldn't be about, I love fluffy kittens or I have 3 dogs. I like long walks on the beach. Keep it professional.
Okay. All right. Now, I don't know whether this is a kind of New Zealand tall poppy thing. I'm sure this phenomenon exists around the world, but sometimes people can feel a bit strange talking themselves up. You really have to, if you're applying for a role, you're really putting yourself out there. And sometimes it can feel strange it almost feels like you're bragging. I'm interested in advice that either of you have about how do you talk yourself up without feeling arrogant or feeling like you're overdoing it? Corinna, we'll start with you on this one.
Okay, well, I would say take the personal out of it, make it as objective as you can. So you can be factual. You can say, you can mention figures or, sales increased by such and such. Talk about targets that you met, an impossible deadline. The client gave us 3 months for this enormous project and we managed to do it. So that it's not you saying, "I think I was really good at this," which is quite a different tone. You can include testimonials or praise from other people. You can say, "In my first evaluation, my manager said he thought I was a really good team player." But also it's a reflection of your confidence. The more you try to talk yourself up, the less confident you tend to sound. So actually just being quite factual and objective about your strengths and what you do well has much more impact, I think.
Nice one. Colleen, any other thoughts on that one?
No, I think Corinna summarized it really well.
Cool. Okay, let's go to a viewer question. This one is from Lee. Thank you very much, Lee. Any key tips on applying within the same organization in a more senior role? A little bit of an interesting, quite specific one there. Any thoughts on that one from either of you?
I would say you're at an advantage because they know you, and that's a really good thing. That we tend to prefer the familiar. We tend to prefer people that we already know. We're a safer bet. So making sure that your application is a really true representation of who they know you as and what you can bring to the role is probably the only other tip I would have.
Corinna?
No, I think Colleen's covered it.
I think for this one, I have a thought in that sometimes people feel that, you mentioned, Colleen, that it is an advantage, but sometimes people will assume that because the other person knows them, that that's the real strength in their application. but still you have to give as much care and attention to your CV and cover letter as if you were applying cold, as if they didn't know you. So definitely don't take any shortcuts, even though you have that touch point, that personal relationship, or even some kind of vague notion that you are, you've been asked or whatever it is. Treat it as a professional outside application, even so. Okay, thank you very much, Lee. All right, now here's an interesting one. Say we're applying for a role and we've got a big gap in what they're asking for. It's very hard. Sometimes job descriptions are very broad and we might have some of the things that they're after and we might really not have some of the things that they want. Do we cover that up? Do we reword and be kind of tricky about that? Do we point attention to it? Do we own it? What kind of advice do you have on this one? And Colleen, we'll start with you.
Okay, I would say that the recruiter or the person looking through all the things will see the lack. Like you don't need to write about it. Basically, it's obvious. If you think that it's something that you should acknowledge because that shows that you have been thoughtful about the process, then I would make that acknowledgement like a very small phrase at the start of a sentence. While I realize my skills in Excel do not exist, comma, positive thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, a touch is all you need.
Okay. And Corinna, anything complimentary, contradictory, other advice?
Well, in my top 3 tips, I said be honest. So, I would still say that's the best policy. If you fudge the details, chances are it'll come out later on, even perhaps after you've got the job, which will not make you look good. So I would be honest about it, but I would also show my willingness to learn new skills. And I would be thinking about examples in life or holiday jobs or previous roles where you did learn new skills, master new skills, adapt to new technology, and if possible, maybe give specific examples that show you overcame a challenge. And I think employers would rather have somebody honest, less experienced, and willing to learn than somebody who thinks they know it all and don't need to learn anything. Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, cool. Okay, thank you very much for that question. I think there was another anonymous attendee one. We've got lots of people by the same name. Who would have thought? Okay, we're going to go to, there's a few questions coming through, so I'm going to just summarize this one. It's kind of a structure question about the order of the pieces in each of those documents. So we'll talk about, maybe let's start with the cover letter, thinking about what do we lead with? One question we discussed earlier was how do we start so it's nice and punchy? What kind of things would either of you lead with in a cover letter? And then we'll talk separately about a CV. So first of all, the structure of a cover letter. What do you put in first? What should you prioritize? And maybe if there's anything that you can think of that you might leave out. Colleen, let's start with you.
Okay, as far as structure goes, I would say you're trying to be memorable and you're trying to be less than a page long. So an easy rule of thumb is, what are 3 key messages I have for this person? Write 3 paragraphs on those. Or if you really want to, throw them in as headings to create a bit of visual variation on that page and stand out that way. Yeah. As far as structure goes, I mean, that's probably...
It's a good tip. It's a good writing tip, because you can, when you're forced to summarize, it means that you have to make some decisions about, you can give lots of different details and lots of different things, but if you had to distill it down to a few key messages, I guess that's a helpful structural tool.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that one?
The thing that we quite often talk about at Write for all sorts of writing projects is to use post-it notes, put some really short message on each post-it note, and then you can actually have them on a piece of paper and rearrange them until you get a structure that works. And that's another way of just seeing if you've got a logical flow, if you've started well, you want to finish well too. But yeah, actually putting them in at the start, I would say you want to start strongly, finish strongly.
Yep. Okay, let's talk about CVs. So Corinna, while you're on, what's your advice on how do you structure a CV? What do you do?
You think of page 1 as your most valuable real estate. So page 1 is where everything that's vital needs to go. You know, I have to say that for those of us who've been around a little bit longer, you know, 20 years ago, CVs were much more detailed. We used to put things like a whole street address and phone numbers and nationality and citizenship and date of birth and all these things where I think, oh, you put hobbies. I remember putting hobbies on the CV as well. And now, you know, we've all got so much information coming at us, and a lot of that is the internet. We've all got way more stuff coming in than we can possibly read in a day. And so now we tend to read it down. So that first page of your CV, most valuable real estate, is your contact details, actually your name and your contact details, qualifications, most recent job, key strengths. That is what I would be keeping for that first page. Things like referees or links to other things tend to be things that you put at the end, because if the reader doesn't make it to those, then it's not so bad. But yeah, put your most important stuff on that first page.
Lovely. And Colleen, anything to add on that? The structure of a CV? How do we just absolutely nail it?
It's probably stating the obvious, but putting your employment history in reverse order so that the most recent job comes first, the later jobs come last, tends to be more intuitive when you're reading it.
Great. All right, well, we have, time is flying by. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so we're going to get into a couple of other questions. A few people have asked about images, about pictures, and also about LinkedIn profiles and not wanting to repeat too much information. Corinna, you talked before about that things have changed quite a lot, like a lot. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the kind of more modern landscape, and any pieces of advice that you have for people when thinking about your LinkedIn profile, images, links, anything like that. And then we'll finish with our last couple of questions, and we might go over ever so slightly. Sorry, folks. Sorry if you have to go at past. We will stick around a little bit longer. Keep those questions coming if you feel you've got a real burning one. Okay, so Corinna, anything on top for you when thinking about the modern environment when dealing with CVs?
Okay, I think the main change is that we email things now. So, you know, in previous times, you would send in clear files full of photocopies of all your qualifications. But now, because we're emailing, it feels much simpler. The risk is that we do include too much stuff. And by that, I would include images and links and things in there. I would say if you're applying something in a creative sector, you know, maybe you've got a website with your design work in it, that would be a good thing to link to. Generally speaking, I wouldn't include links in a CV, because the risk is the person has now got 3 minutes, but they're off looking at a link instead of your CV. The exclusion there would possibly be your LinkedIn profile, if that has a summary in it that sums things up. I mean, frankly, your LinkedIn stuff is probably going to be similar, because your work history is going to be the same, your qualifications are going to be the same. But you can actually save some time by using your LinkedIn link if you want to, as a substitute for some of the stuff on the CV. I wouldn't be putting in images, because you just haven't got space for that sort of luxury.
Interesting. Now, Colleen, I know you love a good link, don't you? Or do you have any different advice on that one? I mean, the thing about this is every job description and workplace is different. So if someone wanted to use a link or something like that, what advice would you have?
Well, I think if they're relevant to the role, and you're like, yeah, look at my blogs because I'm applying as a writer, then by all means throw in a link. But one thing I do want to say is that a photo on a CV, I personally have a strong opinion that you shouldn't do that. My thinking is a lot of people, when they're recruiting, are trying very, very, very hard not to allow their natural biases to get in the way of their choices. So they're trying not to notice whether you're male or female or young or old, what your skin color is, how beautiful you are. And when you put a photo, you kind of ruin their chance to attempt to be a little more, I've lost the word, objective.
Yes, unbiased.
Yes. If they're going to go to the trouble of going to your LinkedIn page and they see your photo there, well, then good on them. But I personally think putting it on a CV is not necessarily helping them with their goal of being an objective recruiter.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay, lovely. Thank you. Let's do one last question, and it might not be a good one to finish on, so I will ask us to finish maybe a parting bit of like cheerleading thoughts. So the last question that I'll ask is just a couple of common mistakes that you think people should really fixate on avoiding. So you've given some really practical advice about what to do. Let's talk about some things just to, if you can, avoid at all costs. So Colleen, what are some things that you can think of that you would give to people who are putting together a CV or cover letter? Whatever you do, don't do.
Don't not put your degree on there because you think it's irrelevant.
A whole, oh, okay, yep. Aim to give a whole picture of who you are, whatever journey life took you on to get there, I would say.
Yeah.
And aim to proofread the heck out of that thing. There's nothing more off-putting than errors in a CV or cover letter that make a person instantly think, oh, they didn't really want this.
Yeah. I agree completely with Colleen. I would say don't, and I think there was a question about this, don't leave out voluntary work because that shows a willingness to contribute even when you're not being paid. You'd be surprised how much value that people can put on that, especially if you haven't got a long work history. You know, it shows that you've been in there getting stuck in even before you were in employment. The other thing about proofreading, you know, a lot of jobs you apply for do not require good English skills, but CVs and cover letters expect good English skills. You know, if you're a fabulous chef, spelling mistakes shouldn't stop you getting a job because it doesn't prove that you can't cook. But you do want it to be, it's that professional word again. So if you aren't confident about your writing skills, get somebody else to have a look at it. Use word spell check, grammar check, all the help you can get. Ask your mum, ask your friend, ask your partner. Just get somebody else to have a look over it. You'll be surprised that somebody will say, I don't think you've used that word in the right way. You know, the things other people pick up, we do it all the time, right? A second pair of eyes is what we call it. Really valuable tip.
Lovely. Okay, well, that's about all the time we have for today. I'm going to let you each just summarize one thing that can be just a piece of encouragement. It can be something to keep on top for everyone. Your closing bit of advice for those people who have joined us. And thank you again, everyone, from wherever you've joined us. This is our consultant's last piece of advice. I'll hand over to you, Colleen, first of all. What's the one thing you would say to everyone?
Okay, with your CV, it's all about getting the information across.
Lovely. And Corinna, your parting words?
My parting, I'm thinking of my parting. I would say the CV and the cover letter are like your audition, your initial screening audition. They're your very first chance to give people a little glimpse into you, but your interview is actually your chance to shine and show them who you are. So think of the interview as the time for them to actually see who you are. And the CV cover letter are really a formality that you just want to do it as well as you can to get yourself through to that next step.
Oh, where? Okay, lovely. Well, thank you very much, Corinna and Colleen, for joining us. Thank you to all of you viewers, and thank you to everyone who submitted a question. We haven't managed to get to everyone's questions today, so sorry about that. But I think we've covered a lot of ground. Now, just a reminder again, this session is sponsored by Write Online. This is our online video library of micro-learning resources. So go to writeonline.co.nz and you can try it out and see if it's for you. And this piece of content is going to go into that library as well. So there's all sorts of different topics on there. And we look forward to seeing you again at the next Q&A, and we'll hopefully see you around. Ka kite.